Hello there, random smart person on the internet. Where can you find a planet whose surface is hot enough to melt lead? How about a planet whose atmosphere is almost completely leaked away? What about a planet with volcanoes higher than any of that on Earth? And what about a planet with oceans of water brimming with fish and other life? These are descriptions of the 4 planets closest to the Sun, known as the inner planets. Earth and the other 3 inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, are more similar to each other than the 4 outer planets. The 4 inner planets are small and have rocky surfaces. These planets are often called terrestrial planets, from the Latin word terra, which means Earth. Let's take a trip through the inner solar system together. Our first stop on our journey is Mercury, named after the swiftest of the Roman gods. It is the closest planet to the Sun. It is not much larger than Earth's moon, about 1/3 as wide as Earth, and it has no moons of its own. It has an average distance of 36 million miles from the Sun, which means it takes light about 3 minutes and 13 seconds to reach it. Astronomers have been able to infer that the interior of Mercury is made up mainly of the dense metals iron and nickel. It is the second densest planet in the solar system behind Earth, with a rocky surface and a large, solid inner core. It is believed that Mercury would be tidally locked with the Sun in a 1-to-1 ratio due to the enormous mass of the Sun and the small mass of Mercury. However, observations of the planet show that a day on Mercury is 59 Earth days long, and 1 year on Mercury is 88 days long. This is nearly a 2-to-3 ratio, which is a stable ratio. Because Mercury is so close to the Sun, people on Earth never get a good view of it. Mariner 10 photographed about half of Mercury's surface. These photographs show that, like the Moon, Mercury has many flat plains and many craters on its surface. The craters on Mercury have been named after artists, writers, and musicians, including composers Beethoven and Mozart. Mercury has an extremely thin atmosphere. Apparently, the gases on Mercury were once heated so much that the gas particles moved very fast. Since they were moving so fast, the gas particles escaped from Mercury's weak gravity into space. However, astronomers have detected small amounts of sodium and other gases in Mercury's atmosphere. Mercury is a planet of extremes. It is so close to the Sun that during the day, temperatures reach upward of 450 degrees Celsius, or 842 degrees Fahrenheit if we're using freedom units. Because Mercury has almost no atmosphere, at night all of the heat escapes into space. The temperature drops to negative 274 degrees Fahrenheit. This means that Mercury has the greatest range of temperatures of any planet in the solar system. Fun fact! Even though Mercury reaches 800 degrees, there are deep craters on the surface that never see sunlight and have water ice in it. Yes, that means there is icy water on Mercury. Despite being the closest planet to the Sun, Mercury is not the hottest planet. That honor goes to our next stop in the inner solar system, Venus, named after the Roman goddess of love and beauty. Whenever you see a bright object in the west after sunset, it is probably Venus. When Venus shines brightly like that, it is known as the evening star, though of course it isn't really a star. Stars shine with their own light, while Venus shines because it is reflecting light from the Sun, just like other planets and moons do. At other times, you see Venus rise before the Sun in the morning. It is known as the morning star. At still other times, Venus is too close to the Sun in the sky for you to see it from Earth. Venus takes about 225 Earth days to revolve around the Sun. It takes 243 days for Venus to rotate on its own axis. Venus rotates so slowly that its day is longer than its year. Oddly, Venus rotates from east to west, the opposite direction of all other planets. This type of rotation is called a retrograde rotation, from the Latin words for moving backwards. One hypothesis proposed by astronomers to explain the unusual rotation is that Venus was struck by a large object billions of years ago. This collision caused the direction of its rotation to change. Venus's orbit is tilted by 3 degrees with respect to Earth's orbital plane. This is why there are not more Venusian transits more often. They're actually quite rare. They occur in pairs of 8 years apart and then don't happen for over a century. The last ones to happen were in 2004 and 2012. The next transit is on December 10th, 2117. I don't think any of us are going to be around to see that one. The atmosphere on Venus is so thick that every day is a cloudy one. Venus never has a sunny day. From Earth, astronomers see only a smooth cloud cover over Venus all the time. If you could stand on the surface of Venus, you would quickly be crushed by the weight of its atmosphere. The pressure of Venus's atmosphere is 90 times greater than the pressure of Earth's atmosphere. You could not breathe on Venus because its atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide. Also, its clouds are made of sulfuric acid. With an average distance of 67 million miles away from the Sun, it takes light from the Sun about 6 minutes to reach Venus. It has no moons. Due to the size of Venus and its proximity to both us and the Sun, it is the third brightest object in the sky. the sun and moon being numbers 1 and 2 respectively. Because Venus is closer to the sun than Earth, it receives more solar energy than Earth does. Ordinary light from the sun can penetrate Venus's atmosphere and hit its surface. The surface heats up, and carbon dioxide traps this heat in the atmosphere. So Venus's surface becomes hotter and hotter. It is 860 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. Venus's climate is due to a runaway greenhouse effect. The sun warmed Venus enough for the oceans to evaporate. Any carbon dioxide that was in the oceans evaporated, causing the planet to warm. It became so hot that the carbon dioxide even got baked out of the rocks. This caused a positive feedback loop that kept warming the planet. Over 40 spacecraft have visited Venus. Some have even penetrated its clouds and landed on its surface. The first spacecraft to land and send back information, Venera 7, landed in 1970 but survived only 23 minutes. Later spacecraft were more durable and sent back pictures and other data from Venus's surface. The Soviet Union's Venera 13 spacecraft lasted more than 2 hours on the surface before experiencing catastrophic failure. Scientists have learned most of what they know about Venus's surface from the data collected by the Magellan probe. The Magellan probe reached Venus in 1990 carrying radar instruments. Radar works through clouds, so Magellan was able to map Venus's entire surface. The Magellan views are so detailed that computers can be used to figure out what Venus would look like if you could fly just above its surface. Venus is covered with rock, similar to many rocky places on Earth. Venus has volcanoes with lava flows, many craters, and strange domes not found on any other planet. Fun fact! Venus is so weird that it actually snows metal. Our third stop on our journey is our own planet, the one we know the most about, Earth. Unlike all of the other planets, ours is not named after a cool god or goddess. Our planet is named after the Old English word meaning ground. Extremely boring. Ours is the largest of the terrestrial planets, possessing a radius of 3,959 miles. On average, we are 93 million miles, 8.3 light minutes away from the sun. One full rotation is 23.9 hours long, and 1 year is 365.25 days. We are tilted on our axis by 23.5 degrees. We are the only planet with a large amount of liquid water on its surface. This is the only planet in our solar system with exactly one moon. Our moon is about a quarter of the size of Earth, the closest planet-moon ratio in the entire solar system. And if you were going to say Pluto and its moon has a closer ratio in the comment section, Pluto's not a planet, so you're wrong. Most of Earth, about 70%, is covered with water. Perhaps the planet should have been called water instead of Earth. No other planet in the solar system has oceans like Earth. Earth's composition is in 3 main layers: the crust, the mantle, and the core. The crust includes a solid, rocky surface. Under the crust is the mantle, a layer of hot, molten rock. When volcanoes erupt, this hot material rises to the surface. Earth has a dense inner core made up of mainly iron and nickel. The outer core is liquid, while the inner core is solid. Scientists have been studying Earth for many centuries. They use what they know about Earth to make inferences about other planets. For example, when astronomers find volcanoes on other planets, they infer that these planets have or once had hot material inside of them. As we continue to learn more about our own planet, scientists will be able to apply what new knowledge they learn to study the other planets. Instead of a fun fact, here's a sad fact. In a recent survey a few years ago, a third of young Americans believed that either the Earth was flat or didn't know that the Earth was a sphere. Although technically it's an oblate spheroid, but I digress. Now this article is misleading, and this will be the one and only time you'll hear me say this, but I'm gonna go to bat for the millennials. Strictly speaking, 18 to 24-year-olds are Gen Z, not millennials. That group is only slightly better at only around a quarter not knowing that the Earth was a sphere. Over 10 million Americans, 18 to 24-year-old, does not know that the Earth is a sphere. This is extremely disturbing to me. During an age where we have the sum total of human knowledge in our pockets, people are choosing to believe ideas over 2,000 years old rather than the facts that are known today. Rounding out the survey, 18% of 35 to 44-year-olds refuse to accept reality. 15% of 45 to 54-year-olds live in Fantasyland, and holding out strong at only 6% of 55 years and older are senile. The mature generation are showing the young guns what's up. When people think of the moon, they may think of something like this: a large spherical rock extremely close to our world. It does not look like this. Instead, it looks more like this. It is almost 239,000 miles away. 30 Earths can fit in between it and us. It takes light 1.25 seconds to travel from Earth to the moon. If you could drive a car 60 miles an hour from Earth to the moon, it would take you 160 days to make that trip. When the Apollo astronauts were transmitting from the moon, there was a delay of nearly 2.5 seconds between when we sent our messages and when we could hear their response. It is the fifth largest moon in the solar system, behind Ganymede, Titan, Callisto, and Io. It has a radius of just over 1,000 miles and is the size of a small pill held up at arm's length. The moon is tidally locked with Earth, which is the reason we can only ever see one side. As of May 2023, 12 Americans have walked on the lunar surface. Something I always like to say, there are two types of countries in the world: those that use the metric system and those who have walked on the moon. The surface of the moon is made up of two types of topography: highlands, the bright, heavily cratered areas, and the Maria, darker, smoother areas. When the Apollo astronauts brought back moon rocks, scientists utilized multiple radiometric dating techniques, and all of the tests confirmed that the highland rocks were over 4 billion years old, while the rocks from the Maria are around 3 to 3.5 billion years old. Just like Mercury, there are craters near the poles that have never seen sunlight and possess frozen water. There could be up to 1 billion tons of water on the moon. This could really help out in establishing and the efficiency of permanent lunar bases in the future. Our final stop on our journey of the inner planets is Mars, named after the Roman god of war. Mars is called the red planet because it looks red when you see it in the sky. The atmosphere of Mars is mostly carbon dioxide and has only 1% of the pressure of Earth's atmosphere. You could walk around on Mars, but you would have to wear a spacesuit. Mars has clouds, but they are very thin compared to the clouds on Earth. In 1877, an Italian astronomer, Giovanni Schiaparelli, announced that he had seen long, straight lines on Mars. He called them channels. In the 1890s and early 1900s, Percival Lowell, an American astronomer, convinced many people that these lines were canals, and they had been built by intelligent Martians to carry water. Astronomers now know that these two were mistaken. There are no canals on Mars that can be seen from Earth. Mars averages 142 million miles from the Sun, and it never gets closer than 37 million miles to Earth. Its day is similar to ours, about 24.6 Earth hours for its day, and 687 Earth days to equal 1 Martian year. It takes light from the Sun about 12 minutes to reach it. It is the second smallest of all the planets at just over 2,100 miles in radius, about half the size of Earth. It has an average temperature of negative 81 degrees, but sometimes at noon during the summer it could reach up to 68 degrees. And of course, those are in Fahrenheit. Astronomers have found that some water remains on Mars in the form of ice at its poles. Unlike Earth's ice caps, during the winter, these polar ice caps are covered by a layer of frozen carbon dioxide. There are dried riverbeds, dried lakes, carved canyons, sedimentary layers, and minerals that we know need water to form. The Curiosity rover found organic material on Mars and found food for organic life. Mars used to have an atmosphere, used to have water, and had organic minerals for food. Could Mars have had life? I hope we find out. Because of the axis of Mars' tilt, Mars has seasons just like Earth does. As the seasons change on the dusty surface of Mars, windstorms arise and blow the dust around. Since the dust is blown off of some regions, these regions look darker. 100 years ago, some people thought that these regions looked darker because plants were growing there. Astronomers now realize that these are just windstorms that the dust has blown off. The United States has sent many spacecraft to Mars. The first one in the 1960s seemed to show that Mars was barren and covered with craters just like the moon. Later spacecraft have shown that regions of Mars have giant volcanoes. Astronomers see signs that hot material flowed down the volcanoes in the past, but these volcanoes are not active now. In 1976, two NASA spacecraft, Viking 1 and Viking 2, landed on Mars. They sent back close-up pictures of the Martian surface. The pictures showed that the rocks looked red because they were covered in rusty dust. Other parts of the Viking spacecraft went into orbit around Mars, sending back detailed pictures. Photographs taken from space do show evidence that water once flowed on Mars millions of years ago. Mars Pathfinder carried a microwave-sized remote-control rover called Sojourner that investigated the rocks on Mars. Also in 1977, another probe, the Mars Global Surveyor, arrived in orbit around Mars, where it began mapping and photographing all of the planet's surface in detail. NASA has had many successful landings on the red planet. Some are still active today. However, one was not successful, the Mars Climate Orbiter. This accident was a multi-billion-dollar mistake. When the Mars Climate Orbiter was programmed, some of the people programming were using the imperial system, and some people were using the metric system. So when the Mars Climate Orbiter was traveling to Mars, the ground system, which was using an imperial system, and the Mars Climate Orbiter, which was using the metric system, were giving different readings, so adjustments kept getting made. 5 times the Mars Climate Orbiter adjusted its trajectory. When it went to go into orbit, the trajectory was so off that it slammed into the Martian surface. Now, I'm not saying which units were the correct one to use, but remember, there are 2 types of countries in the world. Just saying. Mars and Earth are the only 2 planets in the inner solar system to have moons. Unlike Earth, Mars has 2 very small moons, Phobos and Deimos. Phobos is larger of the 2 moons. This irregular shape is only about 17 miles across at its largest diameter. It orbits Mars 3 times a day and is so close to the planet's surface that in some locations on Mars, you cannot see it. Phobos is nearing Mars at a rate of 6 feet every 100 years. At that rate, it will either crash into Mars in 50 million years or break up into a beautiful ring system. Phobos appears to be composed of C-type rock, similar to the blackish carbonaceous chondrite asteroids. Measurements of the day and night sides of Phobos show extreme temperature variations. High temperatures on Phobos measure at 25 degrees Fahrenheit and lows at negative 170 degrees Fahrenheit. This intense heat loss is likely a result of the fine dust on Phobos' surface, which is unable to retain heat. Deimos is even smaller, at about 10 miles at its widest. Like Phobos, Deimos is small, lumpy, and heavily cratered. Typically, when a meteorite hits a surface, material is thrown up and out of the resulting crater. The material then falls back, surrounding the crater. However, these injecta deposits are not seen on Deimos, perhaps because the moon's gravity is so low that these injecta is escaped into space. Deimos is a dark body that appears to be composed of C-type surface material, similar to that of the asteroids found in the asteroid belt. This could mean that both Phobos and Deimos are captured asteroids from the asteroid belt. Fun fact! SpaceX has planned a manned mission to Mars in the 2020s, and NASA plans a visit to the Red Planet with astronauts in the 2030s. I know some of you witnessed the Apollo 11 astronauts walk on the moon, and I hope to share in your joy one day and witness astronauts walk on another world. So there you have it. You learned about the 4 inner planets of our solar system. Leave a comment down below on a fun fact that I did not cover in this video. The best one will get their comment turned into a short. Comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. If you want to see me answer curious kids' cosmic queries and learn about a special opportunity for teachers to partner with Fun with STEM, click on the video right here. Or if you want to observe planets orbiting another star, click on the video right here. And always remember, have fun with STEM.